3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone. As we all know, today's Earth Day, and I find it interesting that as a result of the coronavirus, we're all indoors, and the Earth is doing something quite magical. It's cleansing itself without us. And so perhaps, as Amanda and I talked about in the past, what we need to really do is just leave the Earth to itself, be more kind to ourselves and the Earth will take care of itself and take care of us. And so with that, happy Earth Day to everyone. And hello, Amanda, how are you?
I'm good, surviving.
You're surviving? Wonderful. And our special guest today is Michele Zousmer, a dear friend of mine who I met about 10 years ago at USD's Joan Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice. Michele is an international humanitarian photographer, and she travels the world taking photographs of cultures and peoples in different parts of the world. And most fascinating about her photographs is that they tell stories about peoples and cultures that oftentimes captures narratives beyond words. And so, Michele, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm very good.
I liked your little clip about Earth Day. Very nice.
Yeah. Mother Nature.
That's besides the point. Okay.
Well, you know, mothers know how to take care of themselves, you know, so Mother Nature is no different. I'm just going to jump into it, you know, as we get going here. First of all, how is your creativity in the time of this pandemic? How are you expressing it? Because typically you're on a plane, you're traveling to some faraway place. And now the virus has actually invited you to be at home with your camera. So how has your creativity been expressed?
My creativity has actually been a little nil. I have not felt very motivated. I have been out on the streets shooting, but nothing's really gotten to me. I'm actually, if anyone wants to give me access to the hospital, I would love to be in there where the action is. I'm working on a book, so having the time now, being at home with at my computer, I'm working on a book that I have been documenting a homeless choir for almost 4 years. It's their 4-year anniversary, and that's a fun project, quite a project. So actually, it allows me to connect with a lot of my friends and family members we call them family, from the choir. So it's nice. It's okay.
Give us a little
good days and bad days.
Say that. So you have good days and bad days.
Good days and bad days.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the choir that you're photographing. Give us a little bit about. You said it's a homeless choir. Did you say that?
Right. It's called Voices of Our City Choir, and it was established the summer of 2016, and I went to I saw them at a Community Heroes event. I think you were with me, and they got up at the very end and spoke and sang, and there was 10 of them with a keyboard player, and I went up to them afterwards and I said, "Who are you?" They were so amazing. There was somebody, Mark Sheets, who sounded like the singer from the Righteous Brothers. Anyway, she said, "Oh, we're this new choir we're starting, and these people are unsheltered, and they come on Fridays. We practice at 11 on Market Street." So of course I had to go down there that Friday, and I have never left. So they're amazing, and it's been quite a transition and quite a journey for them. And we've already auditioned for America's Got Talent, where we have I think they started maybe with 12 people, and now I think they're up to about 250 people. And they have a separate performance ensemble, and they also provide other resources, the food banks there, and they provide lunch. So it's really incredible, and it's amazing to get to meet these people and see. That's what I'm all about, is changing the perception of them.
You used the word "we." I thought that was quite interesting when you were talking about the homeless chorus, because you're certainly not homeless. And I know that one of the things you do is you use your camera as a way of really bonding with the other person. One of the things
I should preface that consists of unsheltered and sheltered support. So there are people there that are sheltered.
Yeah, but I know one of the things you shared with me is that in this time of pandemic, what you've discovered is that you're taking less photographs, but you're taking less photographs with greater meaning, versus taking the plethora of photographs that you used to take. And I find that's
over the years, as I've evolved as a photographer, I shoot less.
Mhm.
I don't shoot as much as I used to because I'm always looking for something. And
what are you looking for? What's that thing you're looking for? What are you looking for when you
I mean, I'm just always looking and watching, and I think I'm looking for behaviors and moments that other people don't see.
Mhm. Mhm. So you're looking for that unique aspect.
Right. Some interaction, something. I'm not looking to do a pretty picture. I don't want a smiley face. I want to capture something.
What got you into photograph? What started this in you? I think you were married to a scientist at some point. Was he a scientist?
I was married to a trader.
A trader. Well, sorry
Right.
about that. I apologize, but he was a trader. But
Wrong,
you didn't come out as a photographer. I mean, that emerged. What
Well, my son was an amazing athlete, so I started picking up the camera to photograph him. And he is the most documented basketball player in San Diego. And that's really how I learned. I'm self-taught. I actually became the sports photographer at La Jolla Country Day. And at the same time, as a family, I guess it's my doing, but we traveled extensively. My children have been around the world. And I always had this fascination with other places and different cultures. So when my son was on his way to college, I took a photo tour with a photographer that I admired, and we went to Peru. And he really is the one who, he motivated me to do storytelling. And when I came back, I started volunteering in foundations. I just gave my time, foundations that were dear to me, and animals' rights and children. And I was working for a foster care agency. And that's when I met Sheriff Gore, and that he actually opened up lots for me here in San Diego.
You're talking with the sheriff of San Diego, Sheriff Bill Gore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was your relationship with him?
Well, he was very, he really liked this foster care agency, and he was very supportive. The children came from the Polinsky Center. So that's here in San Diego. Those are the children that are taken away under dire situations, and no family member comes for them. So this friend of mine, anyway, she created this amazing agency, and a lot of those children were fostered, but eventually adopted. So she did amazing work. And he would just come. We had lunch one day, and then another thing he was interested in was this new re-entry program at Las Colinas, which is the women's prison. And he just randomly asked me if I could change the perception of the female convict with my camera. And I was like over the moon.
Yeah, we'll show some of those images a little bit later. But before we come to San Diego, I want to talk a little bit about your international work, because one of the things I know was that you had the opportunity to photo document the genocide in Rwanda. I also know you spent some time in Ethiopia, and I think we've got some images of at least a few images of your work in Ethiopia. Can you talk a little bit about your Ethiopian work and what you were doing there?
Well, Ethiopia for me, I went to Ethiopia purely for travel, and I love tribal people. I mean, I love the body adornments and the decorations. I just think they're so fabulous and so beautiful. So my initial interest in Ethiopia was purely to photograph these people. And at the same time, I also found some stories there. So, but that's a whole other situation. These are just photos. I don't know. This woman is from the Surma tribe, and you can just see how they paint their faces, and even they decorate their hair. It's all, to them, it's their jewelry. I think they're beautiful, just beautiful.
And what was that experience like photographing these people? What did you learn? What did you walk away with? What did you learn about them?
You know, being in these type of the area where these people live is called the Omo River Valley, which National Geographic calls the last frontier. So this is the very, very primitive. And it was fascinating to me to watch how they live and learn about their traditions and their culture. Honestly, whenever I'm away in a place like that, I've been to so many countries where it's so third world. It amazes me that they have all the customs that we've lost. I mean, families live together. Grandmas take care of their babies. I think it's so beautiful. I mean, it makes me realize that we're all basically the same. They love their children as much as we do. They want to be loved and valued and validated. And I think it's really just all about respecting them and allowing them to just be who they are. I mean, they are so beautiful and it's so fascinating. This was the festival. They would dance. We had brought them bags of, I guess, rice and stuff. And they were dancing all night like this. And it was just fabulous.
Now, was this your first international trip in photography? No. Okay, so, but this is one that had great meaning to you. I also know.
And I think that I just got really into all the body decorations. I mean, these people walk around like this all the time. It's not that she got dressed up for me just to do this.
And how were you accepted? How were you received?
Oh, I should have put that. It was, they were so comfortable. And I don't know, I was received fine. I never had a problem. I mean, of course I had translators with me. This is a warrior from the Kara tribe. And I thought that I never felt unsafe or anything. I think Ethiopia is amazing. You know, we were down there. I went down there with a select few of photographers years ago, and I don't remember. I think the first time might have been 2011. And after a while, it did get to be a little overpopulated with people just. I think just taking pictures, sort of just to bring back a memory. And I really like to I went back several times and spent time with them and actually befriended some of the Kara tribes. And I was sort of, I have a very good friend, John Rowe, who's an amazing photographer who did a big, it's called The River in the Bush. He did a big video, actually a documentary, because there's a culture that these tribes, many of these tribes follow that has to do, it's called Mingi. And what it really is infanticide. So they will kill their babies because they believe that certain babies have very bad spirits. And it's kind of complicated. Anyway, John Rowe's translator was someone from that Kara tribe, and he was able to convince 3 of the tribes not to do this anymore. So this video, I helped edit all these subtitles and stuff. But it brought me to another level of spending time with these people. I would actually love to go back, given the time, and interview the women now who are allowed to keep their babies. Because there were many women who, even though they were pregnant, they knew that the minute the baby was born, that baby was going to be taken away and either thrown in the river or put in the forest with dirt in its nose and its mouth. I mean, it sounds terrible. But
yeah, especially as a mother.
It is, but it's their culture for many, many years. They truly believe that there are reasons, it's not every baby, but there are reasons that they feel if a woman it's not married, it's married, but the elders didn't approve the marriage, if they were born out of wedlock. They even will do it as much as up to 3 or 4 years old if a baby's bottom teeth come in before the top teeth, or even if a baby has teeth and falls and the front teeth chip, they will take a 4-year-old and throw it in the river to the crocodiles. They are they believe, it's just fascinating. So I mean, for me, I find it, I have to be respectful.
It's interesting through that lens, through this camera, you have this broader experience and broader engagement with the culture, so that there's still this relationship that comes through not only the photographs, but your personal time with them, which still seems to live with you. I mean, you still seem to hold near and dear.
I do. I love Ethiopia. I have every intention to go back.
Yeah. Your next exhibition, or your next series of photographs was from Costa Rica. Can you talk about your experience in Costa Rica and what was happening?
Costa Rica was an amazing experience in the sense that a family friend was a medical student down there, and she introduced me to the director of public health, and he had me come down to photograph. Actually, he had me come down to photograph his work, and he would bring medical students from all different colleges, medical colleges, to come there, and they would put up tarps in the middle of the coffee fields and provide basic medical attention to the indigenous who pick the coffee. But when I was down there with him on our first afternoon, we were riding, this was the family, and right along the road was this family. There's another two boys, mother and father, and they were picking coffee, and Dr. Ortiz just jumped out of the car. I just went after him, and I'm taking photos. I don't know, I think these kids are cute, but then I started to realize what was going on here. And you know, it's something to talk about child labor, but when you really see it, I mean, this little one in the green, she had to be 3 years old. And those baskets tied around their waist all day is just criminal. The indigenous come, it's their livelihood. They're there for probably 9 or 10 months out of the year. It's the highest economy for Costa Rica, and they have no place to keep these children. So they bring them on to the coffee field and put them to work. And I guess also part of it is how much weight they bring in, how many pounds of coffee they bring in. Anyway, Dr. Ortiz took my images and brought them into, he sent them that night to the vice president of Costa Rica. He was furious. He was a big advocate to not have these children working. And he decided that I should traipse the coffee fields with one of the medical students, because he was a very obvious, imposing figure. So he would send me out through the coffee, and it was so dense, just like that. And we would walk through the coffee fields, and I managed to find many, many, many children. And when I came back, I was there several times. When I came back, I wrote an article. I showed my images, and all of a sudden I got contacted by the US government. And the US government asked to purchase some of my images, and they used them for their annual report on countries that they trade with. And one thing led to another. Costa Rica was furious that this got out, and there was a whole big meeting with Dr. Ortiz down in Costa Rica. He was even advised to do it in his office and to have legal help there. End of the story was that Costa Rica came across, and they decided to be a socially conscious country, and they provided the first daycare center on one of the coffee plantations.
As a result of your images.
Right, and as of now, we have over, I think about 45 daycare centers on coffee fields, and children under 12 years old now are not working, and they are able to stay there. Now they have teachers, and they get good meals, and they get naps, and just what normal little children should be having. Look at this one. She was carrying this bundle on her back, and I said, "What's in your back?" And she starts bringing out her baby brother. So not only is she picking coffee, but she has to take care of the baby all day. And it's like, it was amazing to me.
I know another country you went to was, and of course this is internationally known, but you had the opportunity to photo document the genocide in Rwanda. We don't have images of that, but can you just...
I didn't release images. Well,
yeah.
These were really the survivors of the genocide.
Mm-hmm.
So I was asked to come down. Actually, I traveled with Clive Owens, and he was doing the interview, and I was photographing and filming. And it was very, very graphic, and very, very painful. And it was, I love Africa, I do, but that was one of the most painful countries I've ever been in. And we would have to come home every night and just sort of, what's the word? You know, have a glass of wine and just get over it. But the stories that I have, it was very interesting. We would go into these women, you know, most of the men were killed. So they killed 100,000 people in 10 days, something like that. I don't remember. With machetes, I mean, horrible. And mostly the women are left. So, yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, and it was interesting going into these women's homes, and we would meet with them, and they would be telling our story. And the first thing they always said was they wanted to make sure, they always looked around, that none of the children heard any of it.
They wanted to protect the children from the horrors of the genocide.
So horrible.
Mm.
I'm not repeating it on here, what they would tell me.
Yeah.
And
How do you cope? I mean, you know, it's interesting that through this apparatus, through this lens, you would think there would be some distance between you and subject. And what I'm hearing is just the contrary, that this camera actually invites you, body and soul, into the lives of the subjects you're photographing. And
it's very interesting. I think in a way, I am a bit disconnected. And then when I look at the images after, I just actually documented someone's death and spent the last 10 weeks with him. And I thought I could handle it, and I thought I handled it pretty well when I was there. And then when he passed and I looked at the images, honestly, I was so broken up. So I am taking it in. How could you not take it in? And I think that all these experiences, I've had so many, is really how it has changed me.
How has it defined you as a human being?
I think that I know, I just see people differently, and I see the world differently, and I really never pass judgment, and I believe everybody has a story, and I meet these people with respect and kindness, and I try and have relationships with them to the point, you know, that we can have some dialogue, so I get to know who they are. I mean, in certain projects, I've had more opportunity than others.
Seems like you really carry this with you, that the photographic excursion journey is over, and yet you come back to San Diego, and this experience lives with you and informs you. And
that's why in San Diego, I was working with women in prison, domestic violence, trafficked women, and homeless women and men. So it's just where I don't know, I really just prefer to use my camera to bring awareness of situations and to allow people to even have a curiosity. Let's talk about it, to create conversation.
One of the countries you went to was Ladakh in India, in northern India. Can you talk a little bit about that and that experience? I think
that was a really fun experience. There were 4 women from 4 different continents. We never had met each other before. And Inga Van Dyke is an amazing photographer, and she put this together. She found me, believe it or not, I think on Instagram or something. And I flew to Ladakh. It's so, it was actually my second time there. So gorgeous. It's 360 degrees of Himalayas. So it's just, to me, it's magnificent. And it's a Buddhist country, monasteries everywhere. You hear the chanting of the monks every morning, every night. And we were really there with the Women's Alliance. So we spent about 3 weeks there living. We actually lived with different nomadic women in different parts, you know, all over the country.
It looked like a spiritual experience.
It was a very spiritual experience.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the people there, that part of the world, the Buddhists and the Hindus, they're so kind. And this woman, I actually photographed her for an hour and a half. She had no idea I was even there. She was in such a trance. And she would go all the way down on the floor, like prostrating herself, and then come up. And it was so, I was on both sides. I was all around her. She never even blinked.
You know, speak of on a technical level as a photographer, speak of your use of light and what kind of cameras you use or prefer to use. For example, I'm looking at how beautifully lit that shot was. Can you talk about
that was window light? Mostly everything, actually everything that I'm showing you here, up until recently, I only use ambient light. So that's really the light that's available to me. So this is light coming in from a window.
And what camera are you using?
I'm a Canon shooter, and this was a Mark IV. Probably a 24-70, which is a mid-size lens. I do have primes when I'm in a studio, but I don't use prime lens when I'm traveling like this. The closer I can get to them, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the look on that little boy's face and the intensity.
You know, those little ones are brought into the monastery God, when they're like 4 or 5 years old, and they live there the rest of their lives.
Tell us about this. Tell us about this.
There's a lot of different, what do you call them? Different cultures within Ladakh, and this is the Dvapka culture. They're very, very beautiful. They told me that they're supposedly the most purest Aryan race. I thought they were really beautiful. Beautiful people. And this was some of their tribal clothes. They did not walk around like this all the time, but they dressed up for us.
How long were you there?
About 3 weeks. And that was the view from I lived in like one of those little white houses. Yeah.
Again, I'm looking at the lighting of this shot. Can you tell us a little bit about what time of day this is?
This was sunset. And we had finally gotten to this place because we were going to that monastery early in the morning. And that's where that little boy was. And they start chanting like, I don't know, 4:35 in the morning. So you got to get up early. But we were sort of like just putting our things down. And then all of a sudden someone noticed, look at the light. And we all ran out there and we got like these amazing shots because it was so gold. It was so beautiful. But look at the mountains. I mean, I was in love with Ladakh. I'm in love with Ladakh. I think it's so beautiful.
I can see that from the photography. How much research goes into it? You get a call to go to do a shoot with a group of people, or you go on your own. How much research and preparation goes into it?
Not much. Sometimes I have to look on the map where I'm going. See, I'll just go anywhere. Okay, all right, I'm there. So I have to look, I afterwards have to like see, oh my God, I was right near Pakistan. That's cool.
Yeah.
But I knew about Ladakh. I'd been to Ladakh and I've been to India many times. So, yeah.
I think
Ladakh is like near Kashmir and Jammu. It's all that other part of India.
I know another series of images we have is the Gypsies of Ireland. And I know that you and I have talked quite a bit, and I know you love your gypsies. Can you talk a little bit about those? And we're going to show some of the images. Can you walk us through that journey for you?
I've been photographing in Ireland for 4 years. And I think it started as a discussion with a friend of mine. Just, gypsies are so fascinating to me. And somewhere a friend of mine saw some of these images, and he researched somebody who lived in Ireland who was photographing them and sort of coerced him to let us come. So we now are very good friends. But,
now in this shot, did they pose for you here, or did you contrive this? Or yeah. Okay, all right. Because I'm looking at the little girl in the red parka, and she seemed completely distracted from anything that's going on.
They're children, yeah. Look at this one with his boxing pose. Actually, the first time I went to Ireland, we went to, they have these horse fairs all the time, almost like every other month, because the travelers, they're called Irish travelers. They don't really call themselves gypsies. The men raise and breed horses and trade horses. It's part of their livelihood. And so they have these horse fairs, and so do what we call the settle people. And when I went to this first horse fair, it was called Ballinasloe. It's really, we were there, I think for about 4 days, and we were photographing, and I started to notice this pattern of how actually, well, we haven't seen any of those images yet, but the lives of the women is what really intrigued me. Maybe it was because I worked with so many marginalized type women in San Diego, and I'm a New Yorker. But I just found something about how they held themselves, even the young children. Look at how they pose. This was normal. You could not get them to just not do this. And I had all these images, and at all ages, the teens were all dressed up, looking much older than they really were. And it was all about, meeting a boyfriend. And they get married. Their traditions are, they're a beautiful culture. Oh, I have to preface it by saying that they're very, very pale, and all they do is go into the tanning booths. So that's why they look so orange.
And so this is a culture that's designed for the women to, at a very early age, find a husband. And so the idea is for
They
them to...
marry early, right, and they marry early. They have many children, some of them 15 children. It's not unlikely to find a family to have at least 10 children. And, you know, they live in, I guess, you know, in poverty. The women are not educated. They do not value education. There's a very, very high incidence of domestic abuse. I mean, I don't want to say too much bad about them. I think they are totally discriminated against, totally marginalized in Ireland. The settled people dislike them terribly. They're considered an ethnic culture, but nobody wants to give them any rights. Right now, I'm in touch with them all the time now. They live 15, 20 people in a trailer like that. I mean, if the pandemic hits, they're going to just be gone. And the government does nothing. So I have become an advocate for the women and the girls. I just wrote a letter to the Irish Times because some woman wrote some terrible, deplorable thing about them. And, you know, that's what we do. There are a few agencies that are fighting for them. If I was living in Ireland, I would just be totally, totally on their side because I'm always for the underdog.
Yeah. So you're physically here, but your heart is still in Ireland with the gypsies.
Every day I'm on with Ireland.
Closer to home, and you talked about this earlier, you photograph women in prison at Las Colinas. And so even when you're home, your humanitarian spirit still lives and still thrives. Can you talk a little bit about going into the prisons, photographing the women there, and what that experience was like for you?
That was, you know, all these experiences have changed me, but this was really, I think, one of the most life-changing experiences. I had no idea what I was going to find or what it was going to be like, and it was, so I went with, and actually sat there with my camera for a while until the girls got used to me. And, you know, this was a re-entry group, so these were women who were really prepared to better themselves, and they were ready, they would be released soon. And it was called the FAIR Dorm, Future Achievers in Reentry. And
can you tell us a bit about the story of this woman? Is there a story about this particular woman? Because it's a striking photograph.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, she was there, she was pregnant at one point. She, you know, I don't really want to talk about their cases. Okay. I'd rather not. I mean, I feel, even when I show the images, which I have, most of them are in the sheriff's office or within the corrections agency. I've only had one exhibit here, but I always feel that many of these women might still live in San Diego, and they're out there. And the reentry programs are amazing. And these women have changed their lives. And that's really, I think, spending time with them. I actually started running groups. And for the longest time, I ran a group in another, it's really a pilot project of long-term offenders. And my ladies, I call them my ladies, they're really doing great. But what happened here was when I was asked to go into this prison was at a time when I had a personal trauma going on, when I lost my husband. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would be a good distraction. And what I found for me, honestly, was when I would spend time with them, and as I started coaching them or running groups with them, I found that my grief was being healed along with them being healed. They also had grief. I mean, they were all victims of abuse. I really believe that. I saw them differently. And they all had been abused at some point in their life, in any, you know, sexual, physical, emotional. And I thought they were like my heroines, for them to really decide that they were going to move forward and give back to society. So I gained a lot of strength from that.
You know, as I look at the photographs, what I hear you talking about is the resiliency of these women. And as I look at the photographs, the photograph actually speaks and tells a story of resiliency. Is that what you discovered while you were there?
Yeah, I think so. But I thought the population, for me, it was interesting to learn about this. You know, we all look at these people, or you read the media, and you never stop to think where these people come from. And these people did not have upbringings the way most of us did. And, you know, it's even to the point of them not having a GED or having, you know, nobody ever encouraged them to do anything. Nobody ever said anything to them, even as a little child. Oh, how nice, how great you're doing. Look how pretty you are. So they all are broken. And that's really what I sensed about them. And I would just come all the time, and I sort of was like a women's group, and I didn't really understand the dynamics that was happening, but they were loving that I would just show up.
What is this? What is this particular photograph? What is this woman holding?
This woman was a grandmother, actually, and she was waiting to get out. Those were her two grandchildren. I blacked out the face. But she just could not wait to leave. And the women in Las Colinas were local, and they weren't major offenses. Most of them were probably drugs and things like that. So they were probably in for a year or two. The second program that I worked in West Care, these were long-term offenders. And they were in, some of them were in for years, 10 years.
I find it interesting that you said you found yourself healing as a result of photographing these women. Can we go just for a little, as far as you'd like to go, talk a little bit about that journey for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, when I started with them, my friend and I, we would run these groups, and we actually really started by bringing in articles from Oprah, because everybody knows Oprah, and it was just a way to break the ice. And then we would actually have groups and ask them what they wanted to speak about. And most of them would be about loss. And I shared with them a lot about my loss. You know, they had loss of family and loss of children and loss of self-esteem. And I also was struggling at that time for, you know, who I was and what was going to happen, the uncertainty of what life would bring. So just by talking to them, even saying things as basic as Brene Brown's, I am enough, made me feel, it was like I was convincing myself.
So your camera has been a doorway to the to the healing of the people you're photographing, as well as to your own healing. And I find that to be fascinating, that through the lens of this thing, this object, that it can be a portal towards this healing, both for subject and photographer.
And that's why when I travel, somehow I always seem to gravitate to some story. I can't just go and walk around and take pictures. So I sort of, I'm always like, my radar is up and I have to like find something.
I know the next set of images we have is of the abandoned elderly. And so can you talk about that experience?
That's my new project.
Yeah.
And I was asked to go to Romania with a friend who, well, through a gentleman that I met through my Costa Rica work. He has an organization, a foundation that he makes rubber boots, sort of like Tom's. You know, if you buy one pair of boots, then he donates a pair. So he was from Romania, left at 10 years old, and he was bringing 10,000 pairs of boots back to his village in Cluj. So he said, would you come and take pictures? I said, sure, okay. So I went, and then in our conversations, I said, wait a minute, this is gonna take like 3 or 4 days. What else am I gonna do there? I'm not gonna fly all the way to Romania. So he introduced me to a local photographer. And in my correspondence with this photographer, he gave me several things that he liked to photograph. And one of them was this personal project of his about these abandoned elderly that are in these countries. Because these are women and men. Most of them lived on collective farms that were communist. And now that there's no more communism, they're isolated. Most of the people, anybody young, anybody who could, once communism was over, left the countries. And these people are out there living by themselves. Of course, the government doesn't help. And we spent 2.5 weeks. I actually went from there to Bulgaria. I had another contact through him, and basically that's all I did for that whole time was meeting these elderly people who were living by themselves in these rural villages. And that also resonated with me.
How so?
I mean, I think the fact that they were living alone, most of them were widowed. Very few men were left. The men worked in mines and died off very young. And I don't know, I felt empathy for them. I felt their loneliness and talk about resilience. I mean, these people every day got up and were foraging in the forest for food and collecting firewood. Many of them, I was told, it gets so cold in these houses that many of them die over the winter. So I just got really fascinated with this story. And actually now I brought that back and published it. And now I'm being sent by this humanitarian organization to Siberia, Moldova, and Ukraine to, if we ever get out of this pandemic, to photograph the elderly, the Jewish elderly who have remained in those countries after the Soviet Union broke up. So this is how my camera has been taking me on this amazing journey, and all the people that I meet. This couple is one of the few couples that I met. They're so cute.
I was going to make that observation. Were you going to say something?
No, there's so many things I want to say, but I'm just loving sharing the images right now.
Yeah.
I think they were 90, and they were married, I think 70 years, and they were the cutest couple.
And they looked very
on the farm, and they had to take care of the farm.
You can feel the love between them from the image. Again, speak about the camera you used from a technical point of view. What camera did you use? What time of day was it? And talk about the lighting and the composition a bit.
This was outdoors. I mean, it's probably 24. My lens was probably different, or maybe it isn't 24-70. It's my Mark IV. I have two of them. I travel with two. I usually have a wide lens and a shorter lens. But because I was so close to these people, I just feel real comfortable with the 24-70.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just thought that was the door of their barn. I thought it was pretty. And I don't see the whole image. Do you see the whole image in your end?
Enough of it to get a sense of it. I'm sure there it is.
There it is. You could see the whole, yeah. So they were just sitting there, and one of the things that they grow there was walnuts. They had the most delicious walnuts, and he was peeling walnuts.
I think that's the happiest couple I've seen in some time.
Are they so cute? I love them. I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
No, they were so cute.
And so the next group of images we have is that of voices, the homeless choir. Can you talk about you did at the beginning of the show, but can you just bring us back around to the homeless choir?
Well, you know, everybody knows that homelessness is a major epidemic now, everywhere, yeah. And especially in San Diego. I mean, not especially, but in San Diego, we're pretty high up there. I don't know, I think we're number 8 or something I'm not sure, in the United States. But this choir has, Steph Johnson is an amazing vocalist, jazz vocalist, and she created this, and it's just grown, and we have quite a reputation, and it's so fun to come. Anybody who wants to come down well, if we ever get back there, but it's the Living Water Church on 16th and Market, I think, at 11 o'clock, and it's a jam session. I'm telling you, it is so fun. And they have amazing musicians, because her husband's Rob Thorson, who's a celebrated bassist, and they have very professional musicians who come. So everybody volunteered, you know, we're all volunteering, and the choir, we have amazing talent. And it's just remarkable when you get to know them and you spend time. And you know what? I think about these people and how life changes so quickly.
I believe also they were doing some work with the San Diego Symphony. Weren't they doing some work with the symphony?
They performed with the San Diego Symphony. Yeah, they performed with Patti LaBelle. Yeah.
This is San Diego's homeless choir that's performed with the symphony, Patti LaBelle. Anybody else? I mean, this was at the
theater in Temecula. We also just did a big show at the Wilton Theater in LA, 2,000 people. And we opened the show and they had standing ovation. I mean, there's one woman, Phyllis, in this group. She's not in this photo, but oh my God. And this is Willie. You know, this man has been living on the streets his whole life, even as a young boy. And now he's married and he's sheltered. He has this adorable wife, Crystal. They're very cute. But yeah, they all have a story. Amazing.
It's so interesting as I think of you, and I've known you for some time. I've known you for about 10 years, maybe.
Oh, that's Mrs. Johnson.
Can you tell us about, can we move the image up just a bit, Amanda?
Yeah, possible? So it's on the screen. What you guys are seeing is different than what's being streamed live.
Got it.
But I just figured that out.
Michele,
she comes into the choir every once in a while. She's not part of the performance ensemble, but she's someone who lives in the neighborhood. And I just think she is feisty. She is so cute.
You know, as I'm looking at your images internationally and locally, whether it's the elderly, whether it's children, whether it's teenagers, whether it's the gypsies of Ireland or the photographs of Ethiopia, have this image of you looking through the lens, not with your eyes, but with your heart. And that just comes through.
Yeah, they just told me that. Yeah.
Say that again?
I just was with a photographer in Miami, Nikos Ekonopoulos. He's Greek. And that's what he told me. He said, I shoot with my heart.
Yeah, and that there's a vulnerability and a strength to that, right? It's seeing beyond what the eyes can see.
Well, that's what I hope to show. I really hope to show. I want people to see more than what they're looking at, to look at them as people. I mean, that's Phyllis, actually, the singer.
Who is this? Can you tell us the
one with the glasses is Phyllis. She has the most beautiful voice. And that's LA. And yeah, so they're both in the performance ensemble.
So, you know, you're blonde, you're beautiful, you're talented, you're from the upper class, and yet you're going to these places where people don't look like you, don't speak like you, don't talk like you, don't share your economic background, and yet there's something that happens where they invite you in and you seem most comfortable with them. What allows you to migrate the world so seamlessly?
I think that I smile a lot. I don't know. You know what, I don't know. I just approach people like with respect, and I don't judge them, and I'm always trying to find out something. I talk to them, and then they want to talk to me. Even if they're curious about me, but I think it's just showing up and just being there and just being genuine. And I don't know, I just have learned over the years that I have this special talent to relate to people.
It seems like
I didn't realize it initially, but I'm able to say that now without, you know, feeling a little humble about it. But I do. I really I love meeting different cultures and different people. And a lot of times I do dress down, but I always wear my red lipstick.
A girl has to be a girl all the time. Amanda, is there anything you'd like to say? Is anything that touches you?
There's so many things. For those of you that don't know, I was trying to do the images. So as this is week 3 and it's a journey, I do agree about the red lipstick. I know when I used to go up to Bella Vista, that was my, okay, like, I've got my lipstick on. I can do anything because that's my.
I put red lipstick on all the kids all around the world. I have a whole like series of all my girls right now.
That's great. I mean, red lipsticks and big earrings. That's what I tell my customers. I think it's just beautiful because, you know, Alexis said it so eloquently. Like, you have this way of connecting with people, and that is a unique gift. I know it's something I've enjoyed running the cafe. Somehow I'm just able to break down walls and disarm people and get them to open up. And so I do it in a different way, and you're doing it through your lens. And so many things about being a mom. You got your inspiration from it was your son that led you to finding this passion. So Oh, I mean, I could just start bawling over the beauty in that. But what are you feeling now being stuck at home? I'm a world traveler. Alexis,
I'm very sad sometimes. Yeah.
yeah.
Like I said, I reach out to who I can through I'm so much more of a person. I need to be touchy-feely. I need to have some contact. Doing Zoom is not enough for me. So I do, I'm out only just exercising and then I'm back. But it's very hard. It's very hard. Yeah, I don't know, what can I say? Not great. And there's no way.
What's the first place you'd like to visit and you'd like to shoot when you do have the opportunity?
Oh, April 19th, I had my plane ticket. I was supposed to be in Romania, Bulgaria right now again, back with my older people. And then I was working on a date to go to Siberia and Moldova and Ukraine. But you know what? I haven't seen my kids. I haven't seen my friends. I mean, I'm sort of torn. I need to be connected again.
Right. Well, I think you mentioning wanting to get into the hospitals.
I would love to if someone else, but photography is all access. You need to have access. You need to have somebody to get you close. Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't just go walk in the hospital and start taking pictures. I would never, it looks like I'm exploiting I would never do that. I don't photograph anybody like that. So if anybody wants to have me come in, tell Amanda.
We're on it. We're on it. Already my mind's going.
One of the things that I always think about in terms of Amanda and some of the other friends, and even with Wendy and I think I always say that some people belong to the world. Some people just simply belong to the world. And I'm wondering how that resonates with you. Do you feel a sense of belonging to the world? And have you always felt that? Or is this emancipation something that came along with this photography? Did your body of work kind of inform you that I belong to the world? Or did you come out of the room feeling that way?
I think it evolved. I mean, I think I grew up the traditional way of, being educated, and I'm first generation Polish. My mother was an immigrant, and, I grew up, we had to be educated, you have to get married, you have to have children. I did it all. And then, but I always was my own person. I don't know why I always, if I ran, I just didn't run. I had to run like 20 marathons. If I rode a bike, I had to be a competitive cyclist. I don't know why I have this in me, but and then with the camera, right now, the only thing that fills me up, or what fills me up the most, is when I'm photographing meaningful things. It really does. It's who I am now. And it's very hard not to be able to be close to people. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I went out with my 70 to 200, which is my long lens, and I started shooting people from long. It's fine, but it's like not what I want to do.
Not that connection.
No, it's not.
I wonder if you could start to experiment, and if there's I understand. I totally get it, because I had the same feeling, and I thought, I can't do anything on Zoom. I can't connect with my customers, and I built a community. I wonder if there would be some type of project where you can break that and do a whole series photographing like Zoom calls and Zoom connections, and setting up families that finally get together via Zoom and capturing that moment. That might be.
But that's still, I mean, right now it still means that I have to come into the house, so it's like people don't want, especially with children, they don't want it.
Right. But if even via Zoom, I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
I mean, I don't want to photograph a picture of you on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like from here, I could do it, but it's not going to be the same.
The relationship
That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The relationship is primary. The connection is primary.
Yeah, for me, it's the connection. Yeah. I need to look at someone in that we have to look eye to eye with something.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do our best.
In Africa, they're always like touching my hair and doing all this stuff. It's like, great, I love it.
Because it's the energy, the exchange of the energy too.
Right. It's so fun. Energy. I'm in if I have my camera and I'm in the moment, that's all it's like, that's it. I'm in the moment. Like, that's all that matters.
Yeah. I love the quote. And what I take away from this is, they say one of the things that happens in corporate America oftentimes is that people go to work, they do a job, and they find no meaning in what they do. And as I listen to you talk, and we have traveled for almost an hour now, at the end of this hour, what you said is photography fills me up. And I'm thinking, how wonderful to have discovered something that fills you up. Because
No,
often,
I feel so grateful.
yeah,
I do. I think it's the best gift. I feel
well,
really lucky.
I think the people you photograph are also at the end and the recipient of that gift as well. And what's lovely is they give you something as well. So the idea of giving and receiving through that lens, I think, shows up in the magic of that image. And so I just want to thank you for spending an hour with us.
Thank you, Alexis. You're so sweet. Thank you.
Amazing. It was
Nice
such
to
an
meet
honor.
you, Amanda.
Such an
Thank
honor. And you know, we just met via Zoom. So
So nice to meet you. Thank you.
you're so inspiring, and I can't wait to see what work you do, you know, further for women. You know, I've worked in the space of women empowerment, and I think what you're doing to shift the perspective of the way people see each other is just, it's absolutely beautiful.
What it's all about. We need to all be talking to one another, not fighting with one another. Right.
If somebody wants to see your work, what's your website? Can you tell them where to go
My
to see
website is www. It's my name, michelezousmer.com.
And can you spell the last name for those of us?
Zousmer. And Michelle is with
it's Michelle
one L.
with one L. There you go.
And my
Thank you,
Instagram, though, is Humanity is Art.
Perfect.
And we'll definitely post those.
Okay.
We'll post
Thanks.
them. Okay.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Michelle. It's been
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Okay. Cheers. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, guys. Ciao.
Ciao.